Welcome in, Jake West, Caleb Tallman. This is the Western North Carolina edition of the Friday Night Pressbox presented by Team FYN Sports. After very good round two of North Carolina High School Athletic Association playoff football, we see two of our five teams that made the playoffs standing. Robbinsville lost, Cherokee lost, Swain lost, but Murphy and Robbinsville are still going to be playing football this Friday night. Let's talk about probably the best game in 1A football on Friday night. Andrews falling to Starmount in just the final seconds in overtime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one of those games where it took Andrews an extra minute to get off the bus. I mean, we know that that was not a 5-minute jaunt over the mountain. When you look and you go from Starmount High School from Andrews High School, what is that? About a 4-hour drive, I guess. And you got to think by bus, it's probably 5-6 hours. So Andrews got down big early. I think they were down. As I pull up the box score here, they were down. Was it 20-6 early? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And found a way to come back and force overtime. And then actually at the end of the fourth quarter, Andrews had the ball, I think, in Starmount territory and threw an interception. So I mean, heck of a game. And if anything, you got to say for the Andrews team, they're bringing everybody back.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. This is probably the only time they've ever attempted a field goal attempt this year, to my knowledge. But at the end of regulation, I don't know how much time was left. Maybe a minute.
It was like early. That field goal attempt was early fourth quarter.
Yeah. Well, mid fourth quarter, they kicked a field goal, and that would have given them the lead. And obviously, Starmount didn't score after that, so they would have won the ball game if that field goal attempt would have went in. Coaches are never going to second guess themselves, and I think that they made the right decision if they thought that that's what they needed to do to win the ball game. You just look back and wonder. I mean, what kept normally I think that was the right decision from Coach Phillips and his staff, because normally you look back and you think in an Andrews game with these athletes they have right now, you think, okay, if I give it to Isaac or Austin, they're going to get me 5 yards. That wasn't necessarily the case in this game. I mean, I think Isaac Weaver had 10 carries for 79 yards. That may be his lowest rushing total all year. And then Austin Martin had 12 carries for 67 yards. So I mean, they weren't getting the 150, 200 yard rushing games that they had been getting all year.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that you see is, and I think it surprised everyone, Jake. I mean, the Starmount coaches had to have done a fantastic job, because all week, I'm sure those Starmount players just heard, you're going to have to stand up to the physicality. Andrew's more physical than you. They're tougher than you. And I tell you what, Starmount stood the test. I mean, I'm not saying they hit Andrews on the nose or something and really beat him up, but I think they matched the level of physicality. And we see that when Smoky Mountain teams go and play non-Smoky Mountain teams, oftentimes those non-Smoky Mountain teams just don't understand the level of physicality football gets played in these Western North Carolina mountains. And they just, I mean, we saw, think about Robbinsville, first game of the year this, Jake. They played Asheville School. I think Asheville School they won their first round playoff game. I'll look that up here in a second. Yeah, they may have won their second round playoff game. So you're talking about a 4A playoff school that Robbinsville just beat the crap out of because they weren't ready for the physicality. And Starmount did a good job, and they stood up. Did let Andrews in the game late. Keegan Ellis had a kick return touchdown that sparked the offense. And then Bateman, other than that late interception, threw the ball well enough, it seems like, to keep Andrews in the game.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And one of the things I think that Andrews, I don't know, struggle is the right word, Jake, but in our interview with Dina from NC Prep, she said they're going to have to find a way to stop Zach DeZern. For Starmount. He is their bona fide star. And to be honest, he kind of played like a bona fide star in a lot of aspects. He had 27 carries for 84 yards, which is not very gaudy rushing yards per attempt. but he had 3 rushing touchdowns. So he got it done inside the goal line area, you know?
Yeah.
And then what was really interesting, Jake, and I guess just put your best players wherever they're at. He threw 8 passes according to the box score. He had thrown 5 coming into the game, but he actually threw 4 for 8 for 63 yards. So they were using some wildcat, some trick play stuff. That was definitely something that I'm sure Andrews probably was not ready for on film.
Yeah.
That Starmount caught them off guard by.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're going to have coming into the playoffs. I mean, you throw everything out the window that you've seen on tape because you never know what formation a team's going to line up in or who they're going to have out there. But you mentioned Bateman throwing the ball pretty well. We said that's what has to happen in order for them to win. I wasn't able to watch that game because I didn't go and it wasn't on NFHS network. But I just heard through the grapevine what happened. But I mean, if he's 6 for 13, we said he needed to complete about 50% of his passes and throw for 100 yards, and he only had the 1 interception. So I'm not really sure what happened, why they weren't able to get anything going on the ground. There's no time of possession stats here, but you would think by looking at this box score, just number 12's box score, 6 for 13, 120 yards and a touchdown and 1 interception, that Andrews would win a football game if they get that kind of production from their quarterback.
Yeah, and really when you look at it, all-purpose yards and total yards, Andrews outgained them. They just did. But I saw late, Jake. I was able to catch some highlights. And Starmount, that when they went to overtime, Starmount scored on the very first play of overtime. Andrews made the extra point. Andrews gets to the ball, has a chance to answer on the very first play. Andrews ran a pitch, and I couldn't tell who the running back was, but when Bateman threw the pitch hit his running back in the back. Like it was a broken play. I don't know if Bateman had the play wrong, if the running back had the play wrong. But I mean, it wasn't a forced turnover. Andrews just put the ball on the turf, and Starmount recovered it. Ball game over. It was a really odd ending.
Yeah, you hate to see a season end like that, but congrats to Andrews on a great season. I mean, it's going to be awesome to see all these kids come back, and they're only going to lose three or four seniors. I think that may have been the main thing that they were missing this year was a senior leader that is just going to get everybody up when they need to be up. And I think you kind of saw that in this Starmount game where they didn't get up for the first play of the game. It took them a couple of quarters, took them after halftime before they were really got their heads into that game. So, I mean, Andrew's definitely going to be a threat next year. Some people will probably pick them as their favorite to win the conference. I mean, it's going to have to be between them and Robbinsville with everything that those two teams have got returning.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Andrews. If I'm Andrews, man, I take those kids to 57 on 7s this offseason, get the passing game going. Because I think we really saw Bateman starting to come into his own towards the end of the year. If they can get some type of balance where Bateman can air it out and they can, go from running 90-10 to running 70-30, I mean, I think that really you'll see a fantastic offense, and we know they've got the defense to match.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of Robbinsville, I mean, Robbinsville really took care of business and got their revenge against Cherokee, who beat them earlier in the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some huddle highlights from that game. Pop them up here. Be able to see what happened in this one. From all intents and purposes, Robbinsville being healthy just dominated this game, Jake. I don't think there's anything else to it. I know you were at that game, so you might be able to speak to it more than I can.
Not really. I mean, it's just what you would expect from a Robbinsville team. They came out and they played their best football, played smash mouth football, and then also, as you can see right here, Dason Gross played pretty well. He had some big passes, took the top off, made Cherokee get back on their heels. They weren't able to stack the box, and that allowed Cutler and Cage to run it up the gut and hit their holes. I mean, the offensive line for Robbinsville, we shouted them out last week. They need to be shouted out every week. They're huge. They're mean. They're nasty. They're going to put you on your butt if you're not ready for what's coming to you. And we've seen we don't have official stats from this game, but we've also seen one of the big things. Cage Williams coming into his own, being the 1-2, being the 2 to the 1 punch that we thought he was going to be all year. I mean, he's really become something special here as of late. So
just
I
look
mean,
at that block. I mean, Cage, that touchdown doesn't happen without his block right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Robbinsville is now probably one of the. It's. I would say. What do you think it is? Eastern Randolph, Mount Airy, and Robbinsville as favorites to win the West.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, I mean, I think it's got to be. And this was supposed to be one of
Don't tell
Robbinsville.
Mitchell fans that. Mitchell fans will come after our neck.
Yeah, I think that coming into this year, this was supposed to be a down year for Robbinsville. Um, obviously not. I mean, we talked about it in the Andrews game. And we've talked about it every week. If Bateman plays good, Andrews will win. That didn't happen last week, unfortunately for the Wildcats. But if Dason Gross plays good, Robbinsville's going to win. And he was able to hit some big passes, and then that opens up for stuff like that. Number 4, Cutler Adams, is streaking down the sidelines. So I mean, they're a fun team to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's some stats for you. I'll pause that real quick.
Yeah, obviously Cutler's going to get done what he needs to get done. You see Dason completing passes. If he stays around the 50% mark, he was a little lower than that this week, but if he stays around that, I mean, they're going to win football games. Cutler had 4 touchdowns. Cage, 12 rushes, 70 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. Cage just adds a different element to this offense that they don't have when he's not out there. I mean, he brings the juice. He brings the fire. He's definitely ready to punch you in the mouth. And like you said, I mean, without some of those blocks, Robbinsville doesn't score. Cutler Adams doesn't score those 4 touchdowns. So
yeah.
Look at the complete stats from that game. I mean, it was complete and total domination on the ground for Robbinsville, 311 rushing yards.
Almost total yards doubled him up, did double him up in rushing yards. And give credit to Don Bradley for Cherokee. He had an absolutely fantastic year. He just did not get the help he needed on this night. If you watched, we didn't see too many defensive highlights there, Jake, but Don Bradley was running for his life every single time he had the ball because it was like Robbinsville knew, okay, if we stop that guy, we're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, and Robbinsville, it was this game is going to be either Cherokee proves it wasn't a fluke or Robbinsville proves they can't be beat with a full healthy team. And Robbinsville came out and completely just dominated that game. A guy you've mentioned before, Brock Adams. Looking ahead, Brock Adams and Isaac Wiggins, they're 2 wide receivers. They're shifty enough guys where I think we could see D. Walsh put the ball in their hands heading like in bigger matchups. Maybe not even this week against North Rowan because North Rowan pulled off the upset against Thomas Jefferson just to get here this week. But maybe when they do match up against Mount Airy or Mitchell or whatever one of the big teams they see next. Actually, I think it'll be Eastern Randolph if they get by this week, and Eastern Randolph beats Murphy. Maybe we see just some of those guys line up and get the ball put in their hands because Mount Airy is bigger and faster. So maybe they'll try to match some of that speed by putting some of those skill guys back in the backfield and showing some different looks than they have this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. And I think we're seeing Robbinsville be the team we thought they could be, Jake. And one of the things I think you really, really have to give credit when it comes to Robbinsville is the fact that, everyone wants to wait for Cage and Cutler's senior year for them to be really good. And I'm not saying that is, not going to be the case, that they're not going to be really good when they're seniors. But you do have some pretty solid senior leadership on this team.
Yeah.
You just think Cody Klein at kicker. Obviously, Jarrett Panama has broken it. They've had some seniors have their best years. Guys that we know about Cody Klein a little bit, but we had no clue who Jarrett Panama was coming into the season. He's had some really big games for them. What about Eddie Brooms, a tight end middle linebacker? He's had double-digit tackle games. And then, you just look at the offensive lines on the senior, like Carlos Wesley, big old guy. Drake Hill, big old guy. Carson White. I mean, they've got a bunch of juniors and seniors on that O line that, you may almost argue that, Cajun Color are going to get better every single year, but this might be the best offensive line they run behind in their entire career.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I think Carlos Wesley and Eddie Brooms are two guys that are just kind of unsung heroes, especially Eddie Brooms. He lines up that tight end spot and he seals the edge pretty much every time for Cutler or Cage, whoever needs it. I mean, he's a big kid, 6'2", like 210, I think. He's somebody that doesn't get a lot of love that probably should. I mean, he gets things done in the trenches, and that's what you see from this Robbinsville team. A lot of these guys, like Carlos Wesley and Ben Wachacha and some of the big guys up front on the line, Carson White. I mean, they're not afraid to get their nose dirty. They get down, they get dirty. They put people on their butts, and they just find ways to win ball games. And I don't think that's going to be an issue this week when they play Rowan in their third round game. But we'll get to that one in a minute. Let's shift gears and talk about a game score that we did not see coming. Mitchell 49, Swain 14.
Yeah, I mean, and as I pull it up here, I've got some highlights from that game. I really thought Swain's just so different week to week, Jake. I mean, I don't know what else to say about him. I mean, one week they're great and, they beat a Hazel team or they beat an Andrews team that you just didn't think that would be the case. And then there's a week where they just play bad. I mean, they just played bad against Mitchell. Mitchell's not that much better than them. That's not the case. Mitchell is a better football team, but there's no way Swain shouldn't have hung around in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and it is different going over there and playing in Mitchell. They have a really good atmosphere, and they bring a lot of fans. But I agree 100%. Swain should not have been ran out of this game like they were. It definitely should have been closer. I know if Mitchell fans are listening, you're not going to like what I've got to say, but I mean, I'm not sold on Mitchell. I don't think they're, like you said, I don't think they're that much better than Swain. They're not 49-14 better than Swain at all, in my opinion. It's just, we talked about it last week. Which Swain team's going to show up? And obviously, the Swain team that showed up was not the team that needed to show up to beat the Mountaineers, because Mitchell is a really good football team, but I also think that Swain had the capability to be a really good football team.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting for Swain because Swain loses a lot off this team, Jake. I mean, a lot. They do bring back the quarterback, but they lose several linemen. They lose Carson Taylor. Are we going to see this Swain team get back to the team we saw in the early 2010s? Or is this Swain team, are we just looking at a team that's, the tradition's gone a little bit and they're a third or fourth place team year to year,
Yeah. Well, I mean, two names you didn't even mention that they're losing. They're losing Gavin Lanning, Cooper Hyatt, and Donovan Groenwald. Lanning, their kicker, I mean, he's an impact player. And then Groenwald and Cooper Hyatt, probably their two best players on the team, and they're not going to be there on the field next year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. It's going to be really interesting for Swain this upcoming offseason. I mean, and you see it there. I mean, Swain is known for physicality, and they gave up 373 rushing yards. Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not Swain football.
Yeah. Looking at their roster, they're also losing Connor Driver, big guy up front. But I mean, they didn't really field a whole lot of kids, so they do. I mean, they're losing the Groenwald and Hyatt, their two main wide receivers, but they're returning they're losing Gage Jones and Cameron Blankenship, so they're going to be pretty much depleted at defensive back and wide receiver. But really, off the line, it looks like the only person they're losing off the line is Connor Driver. I mean, the other guys are younger kids, and they're returning. Nathan Bogdanowicz, big tight end, number 81, 6'2", 200 pounds. We saw him make an impact this year. So it just depends on if they're able to get more kids come out and suit up next year. We saw more kids come out this year than we did last in the spring season, and hopefully that will continue. But if you would have told me after the start Swain had that they would end up 5-6, I think what were they?
Let me pull it up. They were 5-6, 2-3 in conference.
Yeah, they were 4-2, I think, to start the year. With their only 2 losses were against Franklin and Mount Heritage, and they had beaten Andrews, Smoky Mountain.
They beat Smoky Mountain. They beat a top 10 3A school in Smoky Mountain. Played within 7 of Franklin. Played within 6 of Mountain Heritage. Beat Andrews, who had a great year. Only lost to Murphy by 7. I mean, but then it's like they have weeks where they lose to Cherokee 36-7.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of the things, and you hit on it before we go to break here, Jake, is they've got to find it. You said this in a previous show. They've got to find an identity. Are they going to keep running the veer and be a hard-nosed football team? Or are they going to be a spread it out, air it out type of team with read option stuff? I think they struggle to know who they are sometimes.
Yeah. I think you're right for sure. I mean, they try to mesh like those two things together, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it's hard to throw the football out of the veer and spread it out like they've been trying to do. And you've got a really good quarterback in Gabe Lillard, but he's also really good with his legs. And you also had Carson Taylor this year who could run the ball well. So, I mean, I think you're right. Not just athlete wise, not just kid wise, they didn't know their identity, but also I don't think the coaches knew what their identity and what they wanted to do with this team. So I'd say we'll see a lot of changes from the Maroon Devils in the offseason, if I had to guess. But let's take a quick break, Caleb, and we'll come back. We'll talk about the Murphy Mountain Heritage game, and then we'll get into some other games around Western North Carolina. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back.
At Circuit World, we offer a wide selection of major appliances, name brands like Whirlpool, LG, Frigidaire, and more. Looking for furniture? Come by and browse our showroom or check out the Endless Aisle, a touchscreen kiosk with thousands of options. Need electronics, gaming computers, laptops, desktops, tablets? We have it all. OLED or QLED, 4K or high def. We have the selection to get you the TV of your dreams. And don't forget, at Circuit World, your credit is always good. So ask about our convenient payment options and 120 days, same as cash. Come see us today at one of our 5 area locations.
Hey girl, back so soon?
Yeah.
3rd time this morning.
Feeling too familiar with the bathroom these days? It's not just you.
Hey girl, look who made it 15 minutes.
At Erlanger Urology, we make it easy to talk about overactive bladder and treatments that work.
Hey girl, you not coming in?
No, I'm good.
Well, okay. I'll be here, because I'm stuck.
Learn more at itsnotjustyou.com. Erlanger Urology.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff. Little did he know that he had just laid the groundwork for the most trusted names in automotive services in the Blue Ridge area. In 1997, Nicholson Tire Center became what it is today, holding the same values of faith, family, and great customer service. 2 locations to serve you, and the Blue Ridge location is currently expanding to offer fast service and the largest U-Haul provider in Georgia. Nicholson Tire Center, Blue Ridge, and Mineral Bluff.
Welcome back, Jake West, Caleb Tallman, the Western North Carolina edition of the Friday Night Pressbox presented by Team FYN Sports. Caleb, let's play some highlights from this Murphy win over Mountain Heritage. Pretty close ball game, but Murphy's offense was able to do enough to win this game, and their defense was able to kind of band together and stop Mountain Heritage for only one early touchdown.
Yeah, and Mountain Heritage, man, it's like that was the most vanilla offense I've ever seen in my life, Jay. It's like they just want to win games on defense and other team making mistakes, which I guess they're so good defensively most of the time they can do that. But when they play a team with a pulse like Murphy or Mitchell, it doesn't really go that well for them. Because honestly, Murphy made some big mistakes in this game that they got to clean up this week. But did you ever feel like Murphy was not going to win this football game once, about halfway through the first quarter and you saw both teams on the field? Did you ever feel like this game was in doubt?
No, not really. I mean, we saw once I saw what Kellen Rumfeld was able to do, spinning the ball through the air, and once I saw how lost Mount Heritage defensive backs looked, maybe you can see it on this play right here, this deep shot downfield. Yeah, I mean,
where he hits his receiver in stride 45 yards in the air. My goodness.
Yeah, just Rumfeld was making some perfect throws, and that was Will Johnson on that reception right there. No, that we saw just a minute ago. And Will Johnson, by no means the fastest guy out there on the football field, but he had 4 or 5 steps on the Mountain Heritage defensive back. So, and there you go. There's another one, just finding the soft spot in the defense. And Rumfeld didn't really even pass for a whole lot of yards. He just picked up most of his yards on chunk play. I'm trying to pull out the stats right here for a second. What did you think? Just going back and watching the highlights from this game and watching the game on the
Murphy did what they needed to do if they want to win playoff games, and that's pass the football. They can't run the football on really good defenses. It's just nothing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like, some teams need to be throwing teams. Some teams need to be running teams. And I think when they're picking up the chunks in the air, it softens the defense to where they can run a little bit. You know what I mean? One of the things I think that was good, though, is even though Mountain Heritage offense was really vanilla, it was physical. And I felt like that was a good test for Murphy. And Murphy's defense looked a little more physical this week against Mountain Heritage.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's see. Murphy had 166 yards passing. Rumfeld was 7 of 10. He did throw 2 picks, but one of them was not his fault. I mean, he got killed in the backfield. The other one, he tried to throw it across his body. It was a bad mistake. One that I'm sure he wishes he had back, and he'd be the first to tell you it was a bad mistake. But 166 yards through the air. If you get Murphy over like between 175 to 200 yards in the air, they're a tough football team to beat, because they've also got kids that are fast enough, like Juwan Allen and Ty Laney. When you give it to him on the ground, I mean, Juwan averaged almost 9 yards a carry, 6 attempts, 52 yards, and then Ty Laney 11 attempts, 52 yards. So they still got it done on the ground, just not what is typical of a Murphy team. But
what I'll say is when they got it done on the ground, though, Jake, it was later in the game after they had softened the defense up with the pass. Like, I think Murphy went out. Did Murphy go 3 and out on their first drive and then have the interception on their second drive? Maybe I think something in that line of plays there, because they tried to run the ball a bunch and it just didn't work on the first couple of downs.
No, offensively, Murphy didn't get anything going until they
until they hit on some big passes. Their offense was dead.
Well, they recovered a big muffed punt from Mount Heritage that set them up in good field position, and then they were able to complete a pass, I think, to Juwan for their first touchdown of the game, and then that kind of let them keep going. But one thing that we've talked about all year that it's improved some. It's been good in some games, and then it's taken a step back and been really bad in some games, is the offensive line play from Murphy. That's why they're not able to get anything done on the ground. It's not because Ty Laney's not a good running back. It's not because Juwan Allen's not faster than pretty much everybody else he's running up against. It's because their offensive line is unable to create any holes. And we saw the offensive line really come back and bite them when they were down in the red zone. The only points Mount Heritage scored, they were down in the red zone, and Kellen Rumfeld threw a pick in the end zone because he got absolutely leveled. So if you want to be successful, Murphy has to be able to pass the ball, and if you want to be able to pass the ball, you've got to keep your state championship MVP quarterback healthy, and your line's got to stand tall and keep guys off of him and keep him off the ground.
Yeah, and I here's what I'll say about that, Jake. I think that their offensive line, especially because let's give a little credit here to some young players that are doing their best because they've had injuries. It's not they don't
Yeah.
have the same starting five on the O line that they did the first game of the year. That is not the case. Are they missing 2, 3 starters, 2, 3 contributors, right?
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of Hazel's offensive line in a way where they're too young, they're not strong enough yet. They're not going to get the push you need in a run game. But if you can have good fundamentals, sound technique, maybe you need to use your ability to cut block a little bit, you can hold up in pass protection. I think that comes in a lineman's progression. Their ability to hold up in pass protection comes before their ability to grab a guy between the numbers and drive him 5 yards downfield. So if I'm Murphy, and we're going to get into that game more in just a second here, Jake, absolutely positively, you got to come out throwing the football this week. You're just not going to beat Eastern Randolph on the ground. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, definitely not. And I've seen film on Eastern Randolph. They're massive. So I mean, we're talking about how bad the O line played last week. They're really going to be tested this week against Eastern Randolph. I mean, Eastern Randolph is a humongous team. You're going to drive 5 hours away, 4.5, 5 hours away, and you're going to face probably the biggest football team you've seen thus far. So, I mean, you better be ready. It was a good win for Murphy, a great win for Murphy. I don't think that a lot of people thought they were going to be able to win against Mount Heritage that convincingly. I think people thought they were going to win, but I think they thought it was going to be a close game. But if you go back and look at the tape, aside from the offensive line play, Murphy dominated that football game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think Murphy was a better football team. There's nothing more to it than that. But hey, you know what? Credit Joseph Watson and staff because it's been an up and down year at times. And I don't know, you could speak more to this, and I know you don't want to give away secrets, but that's a long drive. It's a very long drive to Mount Heritage, 3 hours or so on a bus, I guess. And the team got there. Yeah, the offense was a little slow to start, had the turnover, but I don't think it wasn't because they were ready to play. They came off the bus ready to play, and that's a big deal. And having your team ready for a playoff road trip, it reminded me of the Bulldogs of old, that they got off the bus and it was a business trip, like it should be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, through everything that they've been through this year and through the new coaching change, if you're just an average fan, you probably wouldn't notice any coaches on the sidelines aside from Joseph Watson, because of all the coaching changes that have happened. But credit to Coach Watson for keeping his team together. They could have completely fallen apart after that Andrews loss. They could have lost in the first round the next week, come playoff time, and not been able to get. I mean, that would have been what a horrible way that would have been to end your season as first year of head coach, losing to Andrews and then losing your first round playoff game. But he kept his team together. It seems like he's got his guys to buy in. They're being a little bit more physical as of late, and there's been some attitude changes that looks like that has happened throughout this Murphy roster. I mean, a lot of kids have just come out of nowhere and played really good that you wouldn't think were going to have to contribute. I mean, you mentioned the young guys on the line. Gabe Chastain, he's came in, he's contributed, he's played well. They've also changed some things defensively that have really helped out. They've put 30 Chandler Wood on the defensive line, and he's played really good there. And he's also been able to keep his head. He's been level-headed. If you watch the Robbinsville game, he got in trouble. He let his emotions get the best of him. But he's been really level-headed ever since that game. So credit to Coach Watson kind of reeling his kids in and getting their heads on straight, and telling them, I mean, you still got a chance to win a state championship. I mean, as unlikely as it might be, you're still playing. So why not go out there and prove everybody wrong?
There are only 16 teams left playing in 1A football, and you're one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, I mean, there were points in this year that if you would have asked people, even Murphy fans, if they thought Murphy would be playing right now in the third round, they would have said, heck no. So, I mean, whatever happens this week, I think if you can, and we'll talk about this game in a little bit, but I think if you can win this game, great. But if you keep it close against the number one team in all of 1A in Western North Carolina, I think you've done your job with what little you had coming into this year. But what a great group of seniors that Murphy has, and I know these guys don't want to go out right now, so they're going to give it their all.
Absolutely.
Down the stretch. But let's take a look at some other games in Western North Carolina that happened last week. If you want to pull up the bracket, Caleb.
Yeah, so you see Eastern Randolph took down, drawn 55-20. I mean, 55-20 is pretty bad. But honestly, I was surprised to see drawn put up 20. I think that gives you hope if you're Murphy that you'll be able to score on Eastern Randolph if you execute well. Obviously, we talked about the best games in the state last week. Another overtime game where North Rowan upset Thomas Jefferson, and now they're going to Robbinsville, which I think favors Robbinsville, Jake, because you and I talked about it. I forget what the kid's name is. You might remember. Thomas Jefferson's got that 4-star wide receiver.
Dakota Twitty.
I think who?
Dakota Twitty.
Yeah, I think Robbinsville may have struggled to cover him, just as everyone struggles to cover him. So North Rowan pulls off the upset in overtime. Thomasville took care of business against South Stokes. That game against Mitchell, that's going to be a prime time matchup this week. Mitchell versus Thomasville. That should be a really, really good one. And then Starmount has earned the right to face off with Mount Airy for the second time this year. Starmount, I think, is in much better shape and much more ready for this game than the first time they played Mount Airy, Jake. But the first time they played Mount Airy, it was 43-0. So I just don't see Starmount having – they can play them tough. And to be honest, I think one of the things that hurt Starmount is they threw the kitchen sink at Andrews to beat them, putting the Zern kid at quarterback, Wildcat stuff. So I just don't see that one being any other way. And we can take a look.
I mean,
one of the things I wanted to mention is just you look at the left side of the bracket.
Hold on really quick before we get to the East. Let's talk about Mount Airy and Starmount. You mentioned Starmount's in better shape. They're a better football team. Mount Airy's given up 18 points this year. All year. They played 12 games. Played 12 games. They've given up 18 points. You're looking at a third-round matchup that could look like a first-round matchup score because, like you said, it took everything in Starmount to come away with sneak out an overtime victory against Andrews. And no knock on either of those teams, but neither of those teams has a defense that's only given up 18 points in 12 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
historically good defense.
Yeah. I mean, 48-0 last week, 75-0 a week before, and now they've got Starmount. Mount Airy, more than anyone, benefited by the RPI rankings, I think, because they got Union Academy, East Wilkes, and now they're getting Starmount deep into the third round. So, I mean, I guess it's the luck of the draw, but they got the good. They drew the long straw in this playoff race for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to point out though, real quick, Jake, was for all the complaints about RPI, we said we would know how good or how bad RPI was when we got to the Sweet 16. We said that this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, look at the West. 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6. The 12 versus 4 is the biggest mismatch. But, I mean, North Rowan upset. A 12 versus 5 seed upset is not outrageous. And then a 1 versus 9 where Murphy won a 9-8 game, that's not crazy at all. And then you go to the left side of the bracket, the East. Tarboro, you got 1-8, 5-4, 3-6, 2-7. So in the East, it's straight chalk. So for all the complaints about RPI, at least I've not looked at all the brackets 1A through 4A. I don't think there's going to be too much to complain about because it's come down to your top 8 teams on both sides for the most part are left.
Yeah, that's true. But, I mean, also RPI could have really – I'm trying to think back. I'm not going to get this exactly right, but Mount Island Charter, what would they have been if they would have been they would have been where Robbinsville is, right?
Yeah, everyone – I think Robbinsville, they would have been the 4, and then that would have bumped everyone down 1. So Thomasville would be a 7.
So where would Robbinsville be in the bracket? Pull up where's the 5 seed at?
Thomas Jefferson. So Robbinsville would have been going to Mountain Island Charter this week.
Okay. So, see, you don't get the full effect of RPI, I don't think, because with the team Robbinsville has, there's no way, and the way that Max Preps had them ranked, there's no way they should have been traveling in the third round.
I mean, here's the thing I'll say about that, though. Robbinsville did lose 3 games. And 3 games, all 3, I don't necessarily think they lose if they were at full health and weren't having COVID issues. I think we see the Robbinsville team we see today and know how good they are. But that same Robbinsville team, when you look at them, they lost some games that I think they were more than capable of winning. They could have – you went to Brevard. They absolutely could have beat Brevard.
Yeah, they should have won that football game.
They lost to Broome, absolutely could have beat Broome. And then –
But those two of those 3 losses came against bigger schools, which RPI does not take that into effect, if I'm not mistaken.
True.
So I think RPI is all fine and well, but I think there should be a little bit of an element of, okay, they just played a 6A school and lost.
Oh, yeah. No. I agree with that notion. I'm just saying I don't think RPI is as bad as we thought it may be, because it was getting us going a little bit during the regular season. But I think it's come down to be, listen, no system's perfect. We know that, but it's not as bad as I thought it may have been.
Yeah. We just may see this week some of the disparity between a 1 seed or what is Mount Airy? 2 seed?
2.
Between a 2 seed and Starmount, a 5 seed?
7.
Oh, okay. Well, we're definitely going to see the disparity between a 2 seed and a 7 seed, I think, when those teams play. And we also could see some in the Thomasville Mitchell game. We'll see whether Mitchell is as for real as all their fans say they are, because Thomasville is the real deal. I mean, Thomasville beat North Rowan, the team Robbinsville playing this week, 59-18 earlier in the year. Let's talk about the Robbinsville third round game for a second, Caleb.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull that down. I think Robbinsville obviously should be favored. And I just North Rowan coming to Robbinsville at the Big Oaks. It's a 4-hour drive by car. They're all the way out near Winston-Salem. I just don't see someone coming from that far away to the Big Oaks and beating the Black Knights. I think the Black Knights comfortably win this one. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. What was the line?
Let me pull those up. 13.5. Actually, both our games are 13.5. So Robbinsville's favored 13.5 over North Rowan, which I'd say is probably pretty close. I'd say Robbinsville covers that, though.
Yeah,
I could see them winning by 2 scores and a Cody Klein field goal, winning by 17 or so.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm trying to pull up the North Rowan roster here. Give some kids some names to look out for, but they don't have their stats up, so you can't tell what kind of football team they are. But I do think they have some seniors that are really good on this team. Where's the let's see.
Well, and what's interesting is North Rowan's 8-3, Jake. They've got the same record as Robbinsville.
Yeah, very true. I think the one thing that's going to help North Rowan out in this football game is they do have pretty good size to line up and match up with Robbinsville. They've got the Summers kid who's a defensive end and a tackle. He's a senior. He's 6'2", 235. Then they've got another defensive tackle and a guard that's 6'5", 280. So they're pretty big up front, pretty established. Could be one of the bigger teams, at least if those two guys are any indication that Robbinsville has seen so far. So that's kind of the only hope that I think North Rowan has, is if they're able to get penetration and get Like first contact has to be right at the line of scrimmage when you're playing a team that has Cutler and Cage as their running backs. So you've got to immediately get pressure, get penetration at the line of scrimmage, and at least get a hand on somebody. But before we get our predictions, Caleb, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish highlighting this game, and we'll talk about Murphy versus Eastern Randolph after we get back from the break.
At Circuit World, we offer a wide selection of major appliances, name brands like Whirlpool, LG, Frigidaire, and more. Looking for furniture? Come by and browse our showroom or check out the endless aisle, a touchscreen kiosk with thousands of options. Need electronics, gaming computers, laptops, desktops, tablets? We have it all. OLED or QLED, 4K or high def. We have the selection to get you the TV of your dreams. And don't forget, at Circuit World, your credit is always good. So ask about our convenient payment options and 120 days, same as cash. Come see us today at one of our 5 area locations.
Hey girl, back so soon?
Yeah.
Third time this morning.
Feeling too familiar with the bathroom these days? It's not just you.
Hey girl, look who made it 15 minutes.
At Erlanger Urology, we make it easy to talk about overactive bladder and treatments that work.
Hey girl, you not coming in?
No, I'm good.
Well, okay, I'll be here, cause I'm stuck.
Learn more at itsnotjustyou.com. Erlanger Urology.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff. Little did he know that he had just laid the groundwork for the most trusted names in automotive services in the Blue Ridge area. In 1997, Nicholson Tire Center became what it is today, holding the same values of faith, family, and great customer service. 2 locations to serve you, and the Blue Ridge location is currently expanding to offer fast service and the largest U-Haul provider in Georgia. Nicholson Tire Center, Blue Ridge, and Mineral Bluff.
Welcome back, Jack West, Director of Team F1 Sports, joined by Caleb Tallman. Caleb, we highlighted a little bit of the Robbinsville-North Rowan game, and I think both of our predictions are going to be Robbinsville's going to win by at least 2 scores.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think that this is playoff time. Robbinsville found a way to win the conference, found a way to get good seeding, had some good fortune with Mountain Island Charter, kicked out of playoffs, and is able to go be a home team this far into the playoffs. And really, I think things are lining up in great shape for Robbinsville, because one of the things you got to look at is if they can win this game, they play the winner of Murphy Eastern Randolph. So regardless of that game outcome, they'll be able to get a really good look, knowing, okay, Murphy beat them, we've played Murphy, or Murphy did this and that worked. So it should be really interesting, Jake.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you to talk about for a second. Do you think is anybody in Robbinsville pulling for Murphy to win against Eastern Randolph so they can get another home game, or is the hatred just that far where they don't care to go all the way to Greensboro?
I don't know. I'm rooting for both teams as a Hayesville guy. I think one of the things you see is that as much hatred as there is inside the conference for your fellow teams, when you get into playoffs, you always like seeing these small mountain local town communities do well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's I'd say it's probably 75-25. Probably 75% of the Black Knight fan base is pulling for Murphy to win that game so they can have another home game. But there's also that 25% that just want to see Murphy lose no matter who they're playing.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a part of Robbinsville that wants Murphy to win, and we'll get into highlighting the Murphy game in a second. There's a part of Robbinsville that wants Murphy to win just so they can show Murphy what it's like when this team is completely healthy, because they beat Murphy, yes, but they barely did it on a last-second field goal. But that was also when they had 5 starters out. I think they want to show Murphy, and if they – also think there's a part of Robbinsville that's like – and it's a part of Murphy too. that if anybody's going to beat them, you want it to be you. So I would say that there's a good portion of Robbinsville fans that are going to be pulling for Murphy this week. But getting into that game, Murphy has a very tall task ahead of them against Eastern Randolph. And I think you have some clips from Eastern Randolph so that our viewers can see just how big this team is. I mean, they're huge.
They look like I'm pulling it up right now. Just let me grab it. They look like a dang college offensive line, Jake. They really do.
Yeah, they do.
Let me go back to the beginning here. Yeah, this is a game from several games ago. It's a team they blew out. And the team you're going to see is actually Randleman, the team that they lost to on the highlight package here. Let me get another one pulled up for us here. I pulled up that one as well, just so you can see, because one of the things I wanted to show with this was, Jake, was that I do think one thing you see with Eastern Randolph is if they have one team weakness, it's probably defending the pass.
Yeah. If their offensive line can give them, or if Murphy's offensive line can give them enough protection, then they can probably throw the ball on them. And as you saw right there, I mean, the quarterback for Eastern Randolph is a big kid, 6'2", 235, junior. He also plays middle linebacker, Michael Stratton. I mean, he's a huge kid, but he also sometimes is a little inaccurate. We don't have official stats, so we don't know exactly how many interceptions he's thrown. But just going back to the size of some of these kids on Eastern Randolph's offensive and defensive line. I mean, Landon Laughlin, 6'7", 320 pounds. That could be the biggest kid that Murphy has seen. That Murphy's lined up against.
Just look, I paused it real quick, Jake. Just look at the pure size. You can just the eyeball test. They passed the eyeball test, pure size wise.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, so it'll be interesting. I mean, it'll be really interesting. I think Murphy's got a chance though, because you're the Murphy Bulldogs. It's playoffs. You always have a chance.
Yeah, you see their running back right there. I mean, the running back's huge too. So Murphy's gonna have to. We've talked all year about how Murphy has lacked physicality. If you come lacking physicality in this game, you're gonna get beat 60-7.
Yep.
So it just depends on what team they put out there. But I'm with you. I think Murphy definitely has a chance. I think that going back to what we talked about earlier, Coach Watson had this team prepared for their second round playoff game, prepared for their first round playoff game. He got their head on straight after the Andrews loss. I think they're going to be prepared for this matchup against Eastern Randolph. It just might be one of those games where you get out athleted and you get pushed around, which we don't see from a Murphy team very often. But this Eastern Randolph team could also be the best team in the state, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, and here's the deal. This is my true feelings on the game. Murphy's going to have to win this game in a shootout, Jake. I just do not see the Murphy Bulldog defense, no matter how physical you are, holding this this Eastern Randolph team scores the dang football. I mean, like, you're just not gonna hold their offense to 14 points. If you do, I think the lowest they've scored, they had a game where they played a much bigger school and scored 8 when they played a 4A school earlier this year. Still won the game. But, I mean, in their last 4 games, Jake, they've scored 38, 60, 46, 55.
Well, they're averaging 39.8 points per game, so right at 40 points per game through their 10 wins. So pretty impressive. But I still, even though the odds may be completely stacked up against Murphy, I still think they do have a very good chance to win this ball game. It just depends on can they get up and can they get off the bus, and how well is your offensive line going to hold up, and are we going to have the McCracken-Rumfelt connection working, or are we going to try to keep the ball on the ground? This is not a team you can keep the ball on the ground against at all.
Well, I think one of the things that favors Murphy is I talked about that game Eastern Randolph won against Williams earlier in the year, 8-6. Since that game was on September 10th, Jake. Since that game, their closest margin of victory is 18 points.
Yeah.
So they've not been tested.
Yeah.
But they've only been tested one time all year, and it's been a while since they've been tested. So whereas the Bulldogs have won and lost some close games this year.
Yeah.
So when it gets to the end of game situations, maybe the nerves aren't as much. And two, you're Eastern Randolph, you're supposed to win this game by 21. That is what the state thinks. So if you get late in the game and it's close, the Bulldogs are playing with house money and have a state championship MVP quarterback.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's your pick?
I mean, I'm gonna pick Murphy. I think that they can go down with what I saw last year, or not last year, but last week when they finally put the ball in the air, finally threw it around a lot. I think they've got to throw the ball 20 times in order to win this game. And if they throw the ball 20 times, Rumfelt goes 15 for 20 for 200 yards, and doesn't throw a pick or doesn't fumble the football, then I think Murphy can win this ball game, no matter how big and how scary this team looks. They kind of remind me of years ago when Murphy went down to Albemarle and played a much, much bigger Albemarle team with some D1 recruits on it, on their offensive and defensive line. And Murphy was able to come away with a victory right there at the end. I think it may have went into overtime. So, man, that's just – I think we're finally starting to see some grit from this Murphy team. And if they stay gritty and they like you said, if they keep it close going into the fourth quarter, who knows what can happen.
Yeah, and for my pick, I think here's the thing, Jake. If you line both these teams up and they both play their A-plus game, let's be honest, Eastern Randolph wins by 2 scores. That's just probably the reality of the situation. So if you're Murphy, you need to turn the ball over a couple times, or you need to turn Eastern Randolph over a couple times. You need to win that turnover battle. And if you win the turnover battle by two, I think you can win this game late in the fourth quarter. But I'm picking Eastern Randolph. I think Eastern Randolph will pull away late in the third quarter to where they have it's comfortable enough in the fourth quarter to where it's not coming down to a complete nail biter. But I'm rooting for the Bulldogs. I hope they pull off the upset.
I think you're right. I mean, Murphy's got to go be perfect. And if they're not perfect, you're right. They're going to lose this game by 2 scores because Eastern Randolph is definitely the much better team on paper. So we'll see. I mean, we've got 2 good matchups. I think one definitely favors the Smoky Mountain Conference team in Robbinsville and North Rowan, and one does not favor the Smoky Mountain Conference team as Eastern Randolph should. It's a ball game this is a game Murphy should lose, and it's also a game Robbinsville should win here in the third round. But crazier things have happened, so we'll see. I think Murphy's got the kids, and let's just see if they have the gumption to go to Eastern Randolph and pull off the upset, because we've seen Murphy teams do it before. I know we didn't talk much about the North Row and Robbinsville game, but that's simply because I think Robbinsville may win that game by 3 scores.
It'd be disappointment if Robbinsville doesn't come away with a comfortable win.
Yeah, I agree. But hopefully both teams win. Hopefully we'll be back here next week, because, man, what a show it would be for Murphy versus Robbinsville once again in the playoffs. Seems like it happens every year, and hopefully it'll happen one more year. So for Caleb Tallman, this is Jake West. This is the Western North Carolina edition of the Friday Night Press Box, presented by Team FYN Sports.